Hello, my name is Rebecca Bruner, and I'm on the board here at the Museum on Main and interviewing Jan Batcheller this afternoon. Jan is a past member of the Museum on Main. She was a board member for many years and has been very involved in the Pleasanton community in many different aspects. So, Jan, why don't you start off with, when did you get to Pleasanton?
We arrived in July of 1974. Okay. We moved to the house we live in now at 644 St. Mary Street. And shortly after we moved in, there was a business on Main Street that was for sale that my husband would take his film to be developed. And it was called the Photo Plant. They developed film, and they had plants and baskets there. Oh. So my husband came home from buying his film, and he said, they're selling a partnership in that. Why don't you do that? I said, that sounds good. So I went and bought a partnership. One of the two gals was leaving town, and I bought half the photo plant with Ramona Baca, and she was quite experienced in that. And so that was at 610 Main Street, which is right across from where we are today.
Okay. Well, had you done something like that before, or what had you done before?
I was a teacher.
Oh, you were a teacher. What grade level?
Elementary school.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Okay, and so it was, what is over there now? What is in the building?
I believe it's a computer repair place.
Okay.
Or computer
help. Right at the very corner of the
driveway.
The drive-through there. Oh, okay. Oh, okay.
Okay, so it was mainly plants and baskets, and we were taking in film to be developed. And that was sort of at the end of developing film. But we did that for a while, and it was a beautiful little store. And we would go to the wholesale flower market once a month, rent a big truck, go at 2 o'clock in the morning when the market opened, and just fill this truck with beautiful plants. At that time, that was probably in 1975, Main Street was the only place you really could shop.
Okay.
There was no Stone Ridge Mall, and so you could go to Hayward to Southland, or you could go to Concord to whatever that was there. But otherwise, there was nothing in the Tri-Valley except our little main streets. So,
and that was before Home Depot?
Oh, way before Home Depot.
Way before Home Depot and all that.
Yeah.
So, yeah, so you must have had a pretty good business going there.
It was a delightful little business.
Yeah.
I had 2 children in school, so we worked it out how we would work. And we had a captive audience, especially on dates like Valentine's Day and Mother's Day,
sure.
When sometimes men would forget it and we were the only one open, and we would do a business in our little plants and baskets. This was the day of macrames and all that stuff. So that is my beginning of interest in the downtown. Of course, we live downtown, but...
What brought you to Pleasanton in the first place?
My husband was in the Navy when we married, and he received an orthopedic residency at the Naval Hospital in Oakland called Oak Knoll.
Okay.
So right after we were married, we moved up here to Oak Knoll. We rented an apartment for a short time, but decided we wanted to move out to the valley, and we bought a home in Dublin. We were only here 3 years. In Dublin, we left, went to South Carolina for a year, then lived in Japan for 3 years, which was the highlight of our life.
All this part of the Navy?
All of this part of the Navy.
Okay.
All this was part of the Navy. When we came home from Japan, my husband decided to get out of the service. I wanted to develop roots in a community, and he loved the Tri-Valley and said, I want us to go back to the Tri-Valley. I'm a Southern California girl and was sort of pressing for San Diego, or I went to school in Santa Barbara, would have loved to have gone back there. But anyway, we moved.
Well, where was he from?
Sioux Falls, South Dakota.
Oh, and he didn't want to go back there?
No, but he has a lot of family there, and they really wanted him back there to practice his orthopedics back there.
Sure.
And his nephew is now the president of the Sioux Falls Downtown Association.
Oh.
And doing a bang-up job.
Good,
Yeah.
good.
Joe Batcheller. If you go
Okay.
back to Sioux Falls, go see Joe Batcheller.
Well, I'm from Minnesota, so
Oh,
it's
not
right
far.
there.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, so you guys settled here, but where did he start his practice then?
In Livermore. He had gotten out of the Navy, completely out of the military, and started his practice in Livermore, a solo practice on Fenton, 60
Okay.
Fenton,
Okay.
in Livermore. And so we went about doing our things. He was in practice in Livermore, and I was working at the photo plant. And then we started talking, Joyce Getty and her sister had an adorable shop where Bocce is now,
Okay.
the Bank of America building.
Yes.
And they had started doing hairdressing, but they were so good at gifts that it became a gift shop.
Oh, so they had gifts in there along with their hairdressing?
Yeah, and they stopped doing the hairdressing
Okay,
then.
and just did gifts. Oh, okay.
And she can tell you all about that.
Okay.
And so we got together and we were looking. There must have been, Joyce may remember the exact number, maybe 12 bars on Main Street
Okay.
when we moved here.
Yeah.
It was just a whole lot of bars.
Yeah.
And so we thought, we've got to do something about downtown. Let's form a downtown association. Well, we didn't have any money to hire a consultant or anything. And Joe Callahan was beginning to develop the Hacienda Business Park at the time. And Joyce knew him and said, we don't have any money, but there's a fellow from the Chico Downtown Association that's willing to help us organize. But he's going to cost, and I can't remember if it's $1,000, $1,200, $1,700. So Joe,
Total.
yeah, for 3 days consulting, whatever it was. So Joe said he would give us the money, but we couldn't tell anybody where it came from. He just wanted it an anonymous gift. So the first meeting to form the Downtown Association was in my dining room.
Okay.
And this gentleman from Chico came and brought a whole lot of good stuff and told us how to go about it. So that's when we started. We were saying, Livermore was always open on Thursday nights. And it's known, if you just want to go shopping, you can shop on Thursday nights. And we didn't have a night that we were open. We said, well, we have to be open some night or something because we just closed up at 6 o'clock and everybody was working. So that was one of our impetuses to start a downtown association.
Now, what year would this have been? You moved here, you kind of got...
77, 78, 79.
Okay, so before the Hacienda Business Park.
Oh, way before.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
that was in the early 80s.
The early 80s, yes.
And so we got together what we wanted to do. We were going to assess people for the membership in this downtown association. And it would be a voluntary assessment. And we had quite a long discussion on how to assess people. Some people assess by the number of square feet you have. Some people assess by the number of employees you have. And so if you have more employees like restaurants, you would pay more, you get more benefit than a little photo plant that just has the two owners and all the rest. So we finally went around with assessing by square feet, I think. I don't actually remember, but anyway. So we went around and then we had to talk our neighbors into this.
Was it difficult?
Difficult. Most difficult.
Okay.
And the press didn't help us. So
So what was the press saying?
there was an article in the paper that said Joyce Getty and Jan Batcheller want to tax their neighbors.
Oh, yes.
And so I said, no, it's not a tax, it's an assessment.
And it's not you getting the money, it's for the downtown thing.
Right.
Yeah.
And so then we also divvied up we wanted to get the blessing of the city council.
Okay.
But we weren't going to ask them for money.
Mm-hmm.
So my task was to go to Ken Mercer, who was the mayor at that time, who, by the way, became a very dear friend of mine. But at the time, I didn't know, I knew him, but I did not know him well.
Yeah.
And I went into his office, No, I invited him to my home and had coffee and donuts for him. He ate all these donuts. I mean,
How could he say no after that?
and I said, you know, we want to form a downtown association. We're not asking you for any money. We just want your blessing to support us in this effort and all the rest. And I remember he said, you know what I like about you? You're not asking for any money. Of course we'll support you in the formation of a downtown association.
So what kind of support were you asking for them? Just a physical support?
Moral support.
Moral support, okay.
Yeah. A sign on that a downtown association is
Would
a
be a
good
good thing.
a good
Okay.
thing. There was a state law at the time where you could form an association, but it was only for promotions, activities.
Okay.
We were limited. It was a promotions district. In other words, we couldn't deal in real estate. There was no redevelopment. There was nothing. It was just bring people downtown.
Okay.
How do you do that? So we started with a minimal assessment, but the city agreed to collect the assessment. And they collected it on our business licenses. So if you have a business license downtown, you're going to get an assessment on your business license.
And then they put it in a separate account that was for
us.
For the downtown association?
Yeah. And Pat Lane was the first director.
Okay.
And her office was a desk in this museum.
Yes.
And she was hired part-time, but she did it full-time. During that time...
Pat was a worker.
Oh, my gosh.
Pat was on our board for a long time here at the
Sweetheart.
museum as well, yes.
So during the time that Pat worked on a desk out here, and I can't even imagine what her pay was, we started the concerts in the park, and there was no charge for sponsoring. I sponsored as the photo plant and all the rest, and then we started the farmers market at that time. And all of this, bring people downtown. And it's good to know that in the late 70s, parking was a major issue in downtown.
Yes.
And guess what?
What?
It still is.
Yes. It
So-
is. We've gotten some additional parking, but it still is an issue.
Yeah. So,
Did you also start the Heritage Days or the antique festivals downtown?
Heritage Days, I don't know that we started it. Yeah, I think so, and it was really wonderful. We had a dinner for the Heritage families, and I can remember fixing the window with lace curtains and an old potbelly stove and dressing in pioneer women type of clothing with that little hat, the fluffy hat, and all the rest.
And where would you hold it?
It was, we didn't close off the street ever, but it was just down Main Street, up and down Main Street.
Okay.
So you would have vendors, you would have balloon twisting people, with balloon people, and face painting and all that stuff, and all the stores were open, but it was just all up and down Main Street, and it brought people downtown. But then it was at the hotel where the Heritage Family's dinner was served, and I can't remember what the criteria was for Heritage families, when you had to have been here, whether it was the 50s or 60s or whatever, but it was fun for those people to get together.
Yeah.
So Pat Lane, we had a really wonderful start to the Downtown Association. After that, it grew. They got into a whole lot more stuff beyond just promotions and all the rest, and they have a director and employees and all sorts of stuff.
So Pat was the director for some time, and then she left. Who did you replace her with, or do you remember what was?
No, I don't remember that. Maybe Joyce will remember that. Pat was for a long time. God bless her.
And the farmers market has been just a real draw to downtown.
As have the concerts in the park.
Concerts in the
and
park.
I always wanted to connect the concerts in the park with the restaurants, saying, buy your dinner at the restaurant and take it to the park.
Right.
And restaurants offer a discount for your takeout from 4 to 6 on Friday afternoons, and stuff like that. So we were always trying to tie things together.
even if it doesn't work, yeah. Because did some of the restaurants do that for a bit?
No, I don't know that we ever followed through well enough. I'm
Yeah.
sure the restaurants probably would have done it if we all were running businesses of our own and then being part of the museum board and raising families and.
Yeah, lots of things going on.
Yeah, yeah.
But that's great, yeah, the concerts in the park and the farmer's market have been so popular.
And they were hits from the very beginning.
Yeah, yeah.
And they were always local bands at the very beginning. I think they probably still are. Tommy and the Four Speeds.
Yeah, a lot of
They're all
different-
Amador grads
Yeah, yeah,
and stuff like that.
yeah.
So that's the beginning of the Downtown Association. Peter McDonald was the city attorney
Okay.
at the time, and he helped with the legal aspects of getting us all set up.
Okay.
So those are my memories with the
Yeah.
photo plan.
Well, it was such a good thing to do because I know, as you say, that we've gotten more staff and everything with the Pleasanton Downtown Association, and they continue to do a lot of things to promote the downtown. And it really does help, I think, the businesses to have those events.
Definitely.
You know, anything to bring people downtown.
Definitely.
Right?
Definitely.
Yeah, especially after the mall came in. I'm sure that it was really important to have a downtown association.
Mm-hmm.
Did you guys have any, later, I think you said there was some other controls that they had besides just promotions? I mean, like, aren't there some restrictions now on what can go in some of the businesses and such?
Well, what happened when we started the PDA
Yeah.
is that our budget was only the assessment.
Mm-hmm.
And then the city decided at some time, I don't know when, to add to the assessment. So the city now provides almost half of the Downtown Association's budget.
Okay.
And at that time, then, that's when they hired more people, Laura Olson being one of them, Laura Gilpin Olson. And Gail Gilpin would be a good one to interview.
Okay.
She lives in Alabama now. But
Yes, yes.
Laura's, she worked for the city manager. She retired from the city,
Okay,
Gail Gilpin.
okay.
She worked with Deborah Acosta McKeon. So that's the beginning of the PDA. It was off to a very good beginning.
Great. And now I'm thinking a lot of downtowns have that now.
Yes.
Okay, so, but when you guys were starting, some downtowns had it, but not a lot of downtowns. But you saw the need for it.
Yes. And I left the photo plant after a while, and I formed Gift Source,
Yes.
which I did for 25 years and had an office at 164 Main Street and sold promotional products. So the Downtown Association would buy, and I should have brought them, and I will happily give them to you if you want for a display, little lapel pins, beautiful with our logo, and we did aprons, and we did tote bags for the farmers market and all sorts of stuff like that. Aprons at Christmas, so that all employees of all stores that wanted to be involved, you would go into the stores and you would see the Christmas
Oh,
or
yeah.
the Heritage Days apron and all these aprons. And so we learned this from the Chico downtown.
Yeah.
And so we would have sweatshirts and T-shirts and aprons that all had the Downtown Association logo on it.
Oh, well, that was a great idea.
Yeah.
So, Jen, anything else about the Downtown Association? Because I know you've been involved in a lot of other things that we want to talk about as well.
Nothing comes to mind,
Okay.
Rebecca, right now.
Okay.
I don't know.
How do you feel it's running now?
Not well.
Because?
We don't have an executive director at the moment. They've been through several people. I'm not at all involved, so I don't know what the story is. But I know Randy Brown has been involved, and I don't know. I understand the mayor is thinking I shouldn't say this because I don't know that she does, but she wants to dissolve the Downtown Association. I don't know. You know, the city council are now making rules about the downtown,
Right.
that it's retail only and all this type of stuff. So,
Yeah. So they've got more involved than they were before.
oh, they had no involvement. They just
Before.
merely collected the money. But when they started adding to our budget so that we could grow, they also added to their influence.
Okay. What do you think would be the repercussions if it would dissolve?
I don't, it depends on how it's handled. Obviously, all of these promotions take a whole lot of time to promote: the Christmas parade, the closing of the downtown, the farmers market, the concerts in the park. Somebody has to get those bands, somebody has to find sponsors, somebody has to do all that stuff. So I would assume that would all go to the city.
Yeah.
I don't know what would happen if, I just don't.
A city position, or what if they didn't? What if it just dissolved and nothing? The city didn't do anything.
That would be very sad. Then how, you mean you wouldn't have farmers markets or concerts or anything?
That would be a shame, wouldn't it?
It would be a big shame.
Yeah, because I know a lot. Often I hear people saying that they choose to come and live in Pleasanton because of some of those events that happen. You know, and we know how popular those are, and yeah, you know, the downtown shopping might really be hurt, and restaurants.
Yeah,
they're all part of it.
So when I was the proprietor of the photo plant,
Yeah.
I would have salespeople coming from all over the country to stop by in their route through California to show me their wares and stuff, and so many of them were just shocked when they saw downtown. They said to me, I thought towns like this were only in the Midwest.
Oh.
I didn't know California had towns like this. They just assume it's all beaches and Los Angeles and San Francisco.
Yeah.
And so they were stunned to see what they considered a Midwest style town.
Yeah, it does feel like that.
Yes, it
That's
does.
one thing that drew us to Pleasanton. Yes.
Yeah.
But it makes for a friendly atmosphere, I think.
Oh.
A nice gathering place.
Oh, yeah. People definitely identify with Main Street because of its architecture. And so it is important that we keep the architecture in line with what is there. You know, it's important to keep the same ambiance.
Yeah. So let's hope that people make some wise choices.
Yeah.
Okay. So what else have you been involved with?
I've been highly involved with the chamber.
Yes.
I was involved with the schools. I served on the Board of Hope Hospice for 7 years. I also served on the board of the Cal State East Bay Foundation Board.
Oh, okay.
I've been rather active politically in
Yes,
town,
yes.
not ever running,
Yeah.
but speaking up and being involved in political campaigns.
Yes.
When I support someone, I just go in with both feet and say, how can I help?
Yes.
What can I do?
Yes. You were very involved with the Jerry Thorne campaigns.
Very, very involved with the Jerry Thorne campaigns, yeah. And I'm trying to think, so many of them, almost all of them. But so that's my involvement is with the campaigns. My house is very visible. You can see the corner coming down Main Street, so everybody always asks for signs.
Yes.
I've been slightly involved with school bond issues and things like that. So, yeah, a former teacher, I'm passionate about education. Passionate about education. I served on the school site committee for Valley View School when my boys were there. My boys are now 54 and 56.
And what was the school site committee about?
It was a new formation, and they still exist. And it's just a committee of parents to listen to what's going on in the school and advise. And then I went and became a member of the school site committee at Pleasanton School. That was the middle school for my boys, which was on the site of the current school district office on First Street and Burnell there. That was their school. And I was on the school site council. I replaced Juanita Hagen.
Oh,
Juanita was elected to the school board,
yes,
and I replaced Juanita on that school site council.
yeah.
So, and I volunteered in my children's classrooms.
So, yeah.
As a credentialed teacher,
Yeah. I know your name comes up with a lot of the people we've interviewed because you've been touching so many areas, in the community.
yeah, people just tend to call me because they know, first of all, I follow up. If I
Yes.
tell you I'm going to do it, I'm going to do it.
Yeah, yeah. You were talking about your husband, too, that he had spent some time in the service, in the Marine?
He has a very unique military history.
Yes.
He joined the Navy his senior year in medical school.
Okay, and why did he do that?
He was always loved the military. He actually tried to join before that, and he had some minor medical issue, which they didn't, and he tried again, and they finally said yes. So they paid for his senior year in medical school.
Wonderful.
And then he was commissioned a lieutenant and did an internship in Portsmouth, Virginia. From his internship that was a year long, he went to Pensacola, Florida, where he went to flight school to become a flight surgeon, where he soloed in flight. You have to know how to fly in order to treat the pilots.
Okay.
And from there, this is all in the Navy.
Yes.
The Navy sent him to the Marine Corps, to El Toro Marine Base down in Southern California, to a squadron, VMCJ-1. And I happened to be teaching school in Laguna Beach when he was
That's how you met.
stationed at the El Toro Marine Base. So I am brand new teacher, straight out of college, teaching in Laguna, and met him there. We dated for about a year and a half, and with his Marine squadron, he was sent to Iwakuni, Japan. But that's when Vietnam started to blow up, and they stopped his Iwakuni and sent him straight from Iwakuni to Da Nang, Vietnam, where his sick bay was held in a tent. The whole squadron lived in tents because the Da Nang Air Base wasn't.
Like MASH?
Yes,
the Korean
definitely
War.
MASH.
Okay.
Definitely a MASH sort of a thing.
Yeah.
The Air Force had a building there, and everybody felt, wow, that's really upper class. We're in tents over here, And I can remember, so we wrote through that time, and he was saying, this would be a beautiful resort if it ever would get through. I guess it's a beautiful beaches and everything like that, and the climate is wonderful. So he spent 9 months in Da Nang and came home. After he came home, we got married. When we got married, then he went and did his residency at Oak Knoll. From Oak Knoll, we went to South Carolina for him to do a children's orthopedics. The military doesn't treat children in their residencies.
Right.
So he went to a Shriners Hospital that was associated with Duke in Greenville, South Carolina.
So why would they have him do that with children when they don't treat children? I mean, he's in the...
Just in the residency part.
Okay.
They treat children, but they don't train you how to do. They felt that they had this relationship with Shriners Hospital that treat only children, and that
so
would be more complete. So we lived in Greenville, South Carolina for a year, and he got orders to Japan.
Before we get into Japan, did you have any involvement with the Shriners Hospital, and what did you think of that experience? I've had friends who have had polio who've been taken care of by the Shriners. So what was your experience with that?
My personal experience was almost nothing. I had a newborn and a 1.5-year-old, 2 boys.
Oh,
and
you were busy.
I was busy.
But what did Jack think of it then?
He loved it. This was under the auspices of Duke University.
Yes.
And so there were Duke residents there with Jack. He was the only military person there. And he did a lot of stuff with scoliosis work and all of that. They had a wonderful executive director who was a single woman that had been there forever, Alma Erhammer. And it was a beautiful brick building with dogwood trees down this long driveway. It was a beautiful facility, and they were constantly busy treating children and doing
Don't they treat them free?
Yes.
Too?
Yes. That's what the Shriners raised all their money for. So, and Jack was not paid by the Shriners. He was still getting his military pay.
But his experience there was very positive.
Very
He
positive.
thought highly of the Shriners. Okay.
Very highly of the Shriners.
So then you went to Japan. Did you get to go?
I went. We went with the boys, and I went for 3 years.
Okay.
He was stationed in Yokosuka, Japan. That was a bit on the medevac route for Vietnam still.
Okay.
And he was the only orthopedist there. So all hours of the day and night, if there was an orthopedic issue, he was called.
So when you say on the medevac route, if someone got hurt in Vietnam and they needed an orthopedic surgeon or any kind of certain kinds of surgeons, they would go to Japan to be treated.
Well, there were many places to go.
But that was one of them.
That was just one.
Okay.
That was one of the backups. There were
Okay.
many that were like in the Philippines and maybe closer and all the rest. But this was just one of the backups.
Okay.
So when we went there, he was exceedingly busy immediately.
Oh,
I am a young mother with these 2 babies,
yes.
and I had to find us a place to live. There was not room on the base, so I had to find us a place to live. Little did I know, they wouldn't rent to a woman.
Oh,
You know,
yeah, in those days.
in those
yeah.
days, you know. You really want to send your husband in to talk to us. Well, he said, well, why don't you just do it? Take care of it.
Yeah.
I can't.
Yeah. Oh.
You know, and so our quarters were very interesting. It was a beautiful little garden house of a wealthy Japanese family in Hayama. Hayama is this beautiful little beach town where the emperor has a summer home.
Oh, okay.
And so it's very near Kamakura, which is a very famous, very large bronze Buddha. And so we would go there, and it was just unbelievable, the difference in the culture. I studied the language, which it's just pure memory.
Yeah.
And I studied Ikebana flower arranging. I studied Sumi. I tried to just get into the culture
and learn a lot of things.
Yeah.
How were you treated? What did you think about your experience there?
Loved almost every minute of it. Didn't have a lot of interaction with Japanese as far as any business or anything goes. Obviously, I was out shopping. Our house is full of Oriental antiques. And we would go out, and I would butcher their language trying to speak to them, asking them what I wanted, you know. But the yen was 360 to the dollar. So
Give us what does that mean compared to now? Do you know what it is? Or
it's around 100.
Oh, so that was very good.
Very, very good. Yes. Very good.
And did you have a difficulty? Would they sell to you some of the antiques? Was that okay with your husband not around? I mean, was that...
That was only in big things, like
Okay.
if, ordering propane for your house or renting a house or things like that. In the shops, they were absolutely,
problem.
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I would walk down to the little Hayama market, and the markets, you would have a sock store, but they didn't carry any shoes. And then you'd have a shoe store, and they didn't carry any socks. And then you'd have an umbrella store. It was just amazing how individualized these little stores were. Oh. And if you go down at about 3 o'clock, so many of the ladies didn't have refrigeration, so they bought daily. So it was a real social experience. They walked down in their yukatas with their little baskets, and they would buy the chicken or the fish for the day and the veggies that they needed for the day. But there was all this visiting all up and down the street. It was quite a sight to see all the little ladies.
And they were welcoming to you.
They were.
Wonderful, wonderful.
Yeah, it was difficult because I didn't speak
That
very well.
language, yeah. So what happened, then you came back to,
Then we moved on base. We moved
Oh.
on base. And you might not be surprised to know that I got involved in the Officers' Wives Club.
of course. And what was that like?
It was just loads of fun. We planned art exhibits. We'd invite artists to come down to the Officers Club and sell their wares. And then we invited antique stores to come in and sell their wares. And we'd invite, many of us couldn't wear the clothes
Yeah,
because the Japanese were very different body shapes and
Yes.
everything. So we had sew girls. And so we have fabric stores come in. And they just put fabric out galore. And the military is very celebratory and dressy. I must have come home with 6 ball gowns,
oh.
which I never wore
The
again.
officers thing is probably much more dressy and such.
Yeah, I think.
Or would you say military?
Military in general. It was
general,
very
okay.
separate at that time. Now it's all together. There is no officers club any longer. It's an
Oh.
all ranks club or something like that.
Okay.
But anyway, yeah. So we were there for 3 years. We studied, we bought tons of antiques, we toured, we were just all over. My husband said, when we went to Japan, we're not coming home. You're not going home for 3 years. We may never be in this part of the world again, so we're going to stay here and invite our family over if they want, but we did not see our family for 3 years. We did take what we called a big Far East swing, and we left the children with a Japanese lady who was a World War II widow, and we were gone for 5 weeks.
And where did you go?
We started out, I believe, in the Philippines. And then we went to Hong Kong and Taiwan and Thailand, and then to Burma and maybe 10 different places in India. Then we went to Pakistan, and we went to Afghanistan. And then we went to Ceylon. And so many adventures, so many stories.
And Jack was wise in saying that because, yes, you know, you never know if you're ever going to come back to that part of the world, and let's take advantage of it. Yeah.
Right.
Oh, wonderful.
Yeah.
What an experience.
Oh, yeah.
Too bad the kids weren't older that they could have, you know.
Yeah, they wouldn't have
all that.
remembered.
No,
Yeah,
they wouldn't
they were
remember
2
at
and
that
4
age.
or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah. Oh, wonderful. So then you came back to Pleasanton and you opened your shop or joined the shop and Jack started his practice.
Correct.
Okay.
So we've come full circle.
You've come
Is
full
that
circle.
enough?
Oh, but you had said to me earlier about Jack got deployed again?
Oh, yeah. So he's in private practice in Livermore,
Yeah.
practicing his orthopedics. And he gets a call from a woman recruiter for the Air Force
Oh,
and said, we need orthopedic surgeons. And he said he'd had 12 years of active duty in the Navy when he got out. So in order to retire, he needed to do 8 more years. So he said, oh, I don't know, I'm in solo practice. And she said, if you don't do this, you'll regret it. So he said, okay. So he signed up with the Air Force. The Air Force then took all of his rank, all of his pay, all of his medals, all of everything into the Air Force.
okay.
And he retired as an Air Force colonel.
Oh,
So then
even though he didn't do 8 more years?
he did 8 more years
Oh, he did. In the reserve?
in the reserves.
Okay.
And he was called up as a reservist.
Okay.
So he would do 1 weekend a month and 2 weeks in the summer like reservists do. He did that for 8 years, but during part of that, that's when he was then the physician for an air wing that included pilots and nurses and doctors and medical evacuations. So they practiced medical evacuations is I don't even know what he was with, the numbers. They're on a hat
Yeah.
in our house. But So they would practice medical evacuations. And so he was just thinking he was doing that, and then Desert Storm came up and they called him.
Oh, so,
The orders were for up to 24 months.
and what did he end up doing?
He went to England.
Oh,
He went to England, and there was an old hospital in England, a British hospital, that had been shuttered for years and years and years. And they had to reopen it and refurbish it and do everything. So the United States government sent, oh my God, I don't know how much, in, new equipment and all this type of stuff over there.
all for,
Desert Storm, which is, it was over
Yeah.
in a very short period of time.
Right.
And Jack wouldn't remember either, but they had very few patients. Very few patients. It's one of those things where you do the readiness. You have to prepare for the worst.
yes.
And this was,
And that was the only time he was deployed in his 8 years of being in the reserves?
well, that's correct.
Oh, okay. So it was well worth it for him?
Well worth it.
Yeah,
He receives a check every month.
yeah,
And we have incredible medical care.
yeah. That's great.
Yeah.
Did he ever do anything with the medical out in Livermore? Because we do have a veterans hospital out there.
He did. He did for a short period of time. He was out at the VA hospital doing volunteering orthopedic stuff out there, but then when he became involved in the Air Force, he sort of dropped out of the VA hospital, but he
Yeah.
was out there for a short period of time.
Okay.
And he was doing hips and, fixing hips and things that he did do.
Yeah. Was his family military minded? Is that why he was so intent on?
No, his family wasn't military. He's one of the few military. As a young boy growing up in Sioux Falls, there was Air Force, I think, in South Dakota, somewhere maybe out by Rapid City, wherever, but he was fascinated by airplanes. He wanted to be a pilot.
Oh,
He wanted to be a pilot growing up. And he was just fascinated with the military. And he built military airplanes. He's a model airplane builder. And he did that. And he just always loved the military.
now did either of your sons go in the military? or-
No, they didn't. And we
Okay.
would have liked that.
Okay.
We would like that for our grandchildren. It's absolutely wonderful experience for any young man or woman to do for a couple years,
Yeah.
if not a career. The discipline you learn, the skills you learn, the responsibility,
Seeing
the
the
accountability.
Yeah.
You get jobs and you're fixing multi-billion-dollar airplanes,
Yeah.
if you don't do it right.
Right. Yeah. Okay. So, who in your time in Pleasanton, because you've been here a long time and you've known a lot of the people, are there any names that come to mind that you really appreciate more than, that maybe stand out? Let's say stand out.
Well, one of them is Bernie Gerton. Do you know that name?
Yes, he was a mayor.
2 times.
Okay.
We moved next door to Bernie.
Mm-hmm.
Bernie lived in the house, and there's only 2 houses on our block.
Yeah.
And when we moved in, Bernie just took us under his wing.
Oh,
He said, I'm going to introduce you to Pleasanton. He had a barbecue. He invited the superintendent of schools, the president of the bank, all the city council, the mayors, everything. Now, I think I'm 30 years old. I've just gotten
and you're just moving, yeah, and all the bigwigs in Pleasanton.
Yeah, and we happened, just dumb luck. We didn't know it. I just liked the house.
Right.
It was surrounded by historic people. Colonel McGoffin lived across the street. Bernie Gerton was beside us. The Hanson family lived down the street. J.P. George is behind us, and it just goes on and on and on. It was a very historically active neighborhood.
Yeah.
But Bernie then, I don't know, he just decided that he wanted to mentor me especially. So he would come over most afternoons and sit and chat. And some of the times I'm thinking, oh my God, I've got to get the kids to, I've got to go here. But I would sit and talk with Bernie, and that didn't last too long because Bernie passed away. It was very sad. But Bernie was one. Another person was J.P. Georges, who lived behind us. J.P. was raised in Pleasanton. I think he moved here in the late 20s, the early 30s. And he retired from the post office here. But his first job was at the gas station on the corner of Main Street.
Okay, the one that still exists.
That still exists.
Okay.
And his wife was from Livermore, but she had such a crush on JP that she would drive all the way from Livermore to buy her gas from JP. And anyway, they got married, and he opened a creamery. And they lived upstairs above it on Main Street. He had a creamery right down the street here, where I think it's where Tri-Valley restaurant is. Isn't there a Tri-Valley?
Oh, bistro.
Bistro.
Oh, okay.
And there's still living quarters upstairs. And they lived upstairs, and he had a creamery, and he said that was where everyone would go after football games at Amador.
Because he must have had malts and shakes.
And hamburgers, and yeah.
Okay, so it wasn't a creamery, a working creamery,
No. He
It
called
was
it the
a-
creamery. It's an ice cream store.
Ice cream store, okay.
Yeah.
All right. Oh, sure, that's where the kids would hang out.
Yeah. And then during the war, he worked for Kaiser. But he was a unique gentleman. He was a collector. He had like every newspaper, like the opening of the Bay Bridge and all these things. And he gave a lot to the museum. He had the pot-bellied stove from the Western Pacific. His basement was just full of guns and newspapers and clothing and everything. And he was a character. And he had a little red Jeep.
Yeah.
World War II Jeep, little World War II Jeep. And every spring, he'd get a red can of spray paint and go out and spray the whole Jeep. Just spray it over everything. And he would go, what he said, back to the Cottinger. And it was the Hanson property where Cottinger Hills is now.
Okay.
He had access to that. He could hunt deer. He could cut wood. He could do everything. So he took my boys. He took me. He took us all back in there, and he would go all back in there
And taught the boys hunting and those kinds of things.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So JP was a big influence on
Yeah.
us.
On your whole family.
And then Dagmar Fulton
yes.
lived another couple doors down.
Where did Dagmar live?
So how do I describe it? Do you know where the Hanson house is?
Yes.
The Dunkley's boy lives there. The Hansons and what's her name were neighbors.
Oh, okay.
And Dagmar,
Dagmar. And Dagmar was,
the founder of the museum.
and when you say founder, she actually put it together?
I don't know. It was Bill Apperson.
Okay.
And there was I think there was a Tri-Valley, Livermore, Amador, ALVHS, Amador, Livermore Valley Historical Association.
Yeah. Okay.
Well, something happened, and there was a dispute between Livermore and Pleasanton.
Okay.
This was before my time, but anyway, Livermore formed its historical society, and Pleasanton formed its.
Okay. And Dagmar was kind of the...
Dagmar and Bill Apperson were part of it at that time. But Dagmar, did you know Dagmar?
No.
She was a force to be reckoned with.
That's what I understand.
She was a force. She was just a force to be reckoned with, a really good woman, and determined to do everything, very intelligent woman and all the rest, but it was Dagmar's way or the highway.
Okay.
And she just took the museum under her wing. When I'm going to go back now to when I was at the photo plant.
Okay.
This was in the late 70s. This was the police department.
Yes.
This was the police department. And Blue Agave was school district headquarters.
Okay.
Then the school district moved down to 123 Main Street, which is now City Hall. That was the school district office. That was built as the school district office.
Okay.
Then the city decided they wanted it, and so that's when they sold. The school district sold 123 Main Street to the city of Pleasanton, and the school district moved up the hill.
to the old school building.
Yeah.
Okay. So when they formed the museum, it was not here. It was,
No, I believe it was here. I believe.
did it start at the fairgrounds?
Oh, well, there still is one. That I don't know. That probably did. It probably did. But as soon as the police department left this, it was probably Dagmar that went knocking on the door of the city and said, we want that building. And I believe to this day, the museum pays $1 a year to rent this building.
Well, we haven't been paying that, but we're supposed to pay $1 a year. But yes, yeah, that's our, but yeah, we don't actually pay it.
Oh, okay. But anyway,
Yeah.
this is.
Don't tell the taxpayers, but yes, I mean, and it's worked out wonderfully. I mean, because it's a beautiful building, and thank goodness the city lets us rent it, and because we're right downtown in the midst of everything, and you know, being on the board, that's been very helpful, because we've gotten involved in a lot of the stuff downtown as well, yes, and brought more attention to the museum. You know.
I can't imagine a better use of this building. Cannot imagine a better use of this building.
Yeah.
I believe that a museum speaks volumes to the character of a city if they care about their artifacts and their history and all the rest. It speaks volumes, and so it's fair. The museum is exceedingly important.
And don't you feel Pleasanton generally feels that way about their town, the history and stuff, especially the people who've been here for a while?
Yeah, the people have been here. I think there are so many people here that just live here and travel to Silicon Valley that have no knowledge of any sort of history or any sort of doings. They don't watch city council meetings. They don't understand anything. I am very grateful that we have the Pleasanton Weekly.
Yes.
Again, I feel like that is of importance with the museum practically, that we have a local paper that presents a local point of view on local activities. And so I was chair of the chamber when the weekly started to be formed, and a gentleman came over to the chamber and said, we want to start, they're over on the peninsula,
Right.
and they wanted to start a weekly paper for Pleasanton. And I immediately said, I know who you have to have for your editor, because Jeb Bing was serving on the chamber board with me.
Okay.
I knew Jeb from the chamber board.
And he had been in that kind of a position before.
He worked in Chicago for the Chicago Sun-Times. I knew he was and I believe he was a freelance writer or something at the time. And so I told them, you got to see Jeb Bing. And then I called Jeb Bing and I said, I've got the job for you. And from there on, then Jeb called me maybe 2 or 3 weeks later and said, Jan, I don't think I got the job. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, well, I haven't heard from him since then. I said, well, let me see, let me find out what's going on. So I called, I believe his name was Mr. Johnson. I'm not sure, the head of Embarcadero.
Yeah.
Embarcadero something or other.
Yeah.
Mr. Johnson. And I said, I'm calling regarding the Pleasanton Weekly and what you're thinking of Jeb Bing. And he says, oh, no, he's our man. We're all set. We just need to get organized before we call him.
See, that's what you've been active doing in Pleasanton, is that behind the scenes kind of stuff, like that.
Yeah.
Thinking Jeb would be perfect for this.
Just because I knew him with the chamber. It's all from the chamber.
Yes.
And then I was highly involved in the centennial.
Yeah.
I don't know, were you here for the centennial?
Yes.
1994. Yeah, I was highly involved in the centennial. So, yeah.
Yeah.
And I've loved every minute of it. I enjoy being in the midst of stuff and trying to help out. But I also definitely have my views that
That's fine.
Speak up. I'm not afraid.
No. So what do you think about how Pleasanton has progressed over the years? You came here in the 70s, now 2023. What's good and what's bad?
What's good is we have maintained a sense of community, I think. And that's due, in fact, to a lot of the arts community, the arts groups and things like that. I'm very upset about the housing. I'm very upset about the housing, have always been. I believe we're a very NIMBY city.
Yes.
We don't want any more housing. We don't want that kind. Well, my view is I was that kind. I did not grow up well-to-do. I'm the oldest of 5. And so I always wanted the more the merrier. And where I live now, some homes are very expensive around me,
Yes.
as you well know, but I live probably within 100 yards of the most affordable housing in Pleasanton. And that's Pleasanton Avenue, those little apartments that back up to the railroad. Those people are wonderful neighbors. My children played with their children. They're just wonderful neighbors. And that kind, I don't get.
Yeah.
And I just think we've needed, everybody doesn't want the developer. You know, the developer is a bad word. And yet, most people's estates, the most valuable thing in their estate is a developer-built house.
Right. And that's who really had Pleasanton grow in the 70s and 80s, is the developers with, you know, Birdland and, I mean.
We were all an affordable community.
Right. Yes.
It was all affordable.
Yeah.
That people were moving out of places to come because Pleasanton was affordable.
Right.
Well, so many people put their stake in the ground and said, I'm here, nobody else can come.
Yeah.
And I say to those people who haven't been here half as long as me, maybe we ought to take everybody who came after 1974 and say you have to leave.
Yeah.
You know, and I still want affordable housing. And it's just a dirty word.
Yeah.
And that's very upsetting to me. The value of my house is obscene.
Yeah. And you've got to be blessed that your house went to that kind of price, but yeah, at the benefit of who? I mean, yeah, not that we have to leave this other faction out. And older people, one-story houses, smaller houses, like Goldcrest and stuff, would be lovely to see that being built too.
Oh my God. I'm a big tiny house fan.
Yeah.
So I love that ADUs are being able to be built back
Yes.
there. And but the city still is trying. I don't want this on tape necessarily, but I'm not afraid to say I like the 5-story affordable building there.
Yeah.
The all affordable housing, 5 stories.
Yeah.
Everybody says, but there's no parking. I was on the downtown specific plan update.
Yeah.
And that vacant lot across the street was first proposed by the city to
And
be
we're
a park.
talking about the vacant lot that the San Francisco owned at one
Yes.
time. Yes.
Yes. And the first proposal that came to us from city staff was that a parking garage go there.
Yes.
So I said to the city manager and people who are so against this 5-story building, you could really enhance the value of that if you built a garage across the street where these people could park their cars.
Yeah.
So things can be done if you want to, but people wring their hands, and I'm afraid the current council is very anti-housing.
Yeah.
As much as they can. In fact, they're trying to support state laws that change what the state has done. But, you know.
And I know we fought that a lot too, and spent a lot of money trying to fight that.
Oh, yeah. And
Yeah.
we lost.
And we lost.
And then we appealed.
Yeah.
And we lost the appeal.
Yeah.
And then the city lost the ability to issue any permits.
Yeah.
If you wanted to do anything, you had to go to the state. And we had to, what's the word? Change the ability of the land to build housing on 72 acres. If you remember, zone. We had to, and so this is when Jerry Thorne was mayor and they were scrambling. Where are we going to find 72 acres? So they found it. They actually found more because the state had to come in and approve the acreage, which the city said was going to do that. And so when the East Side study was cut off, I was so upset. You know, people said, we're in a drought. You can't build more houses. I said, but you can plan. Nobody's saying build a house, you can plan.
Yeah.
And the plan was to give money to the schools for a school. There was parks. It was a beautiful plan.
Yeah.
Lots of housing. And then they cut it off. And now here we are.
Yeah. So that would be a negative that you don't like. How about any positives?
Well, certainly the sense of community
Okay.
and the downtown.
That we kept it.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
we've kept this sense of community. And I strongly identify with the city of Pleasanton, whereas if you lived in LA, you might not identify with.
Or Dublin, where they don't really, or San Ramon, where they don't really have a downtown.
Correct.
Yeah.
But Danville.
Yeah. Livermore.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it does help give a community a sense of that friendliness and togetherness.
Yeah. And history.
Yeah. Yeah, it does. Anything else that you would like to end up with?
I can't think of anything.
Well, it's been wonderful to visit with you again. And I know you've always been behind all the things that are going on. And as I told you before we started this, so many of the people I've talked to about the history of Pleasanton and how it's grown have mentioned Jan Batcheller, you know, was involved in this or that or whatever. So thank you so much, Jan.
Thank you, Rebecca.
Okay.